Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down a really frustrating tactic that school districts sometimes use to dodge accountability. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how you can flip it and turn their strategy completely to your advantage.
All right, let's dive right in. It usually starts with these 5 little words. And when you get this response, it feels like hitting a brick wall, right? Like a total dead end when you're just trying to protect your kid. But what if it's not a wall? What if it's actually a doorway?
You see, this isn't just about someone being bad at paperwork. This is a very specific, calculated strategy. It's called the documentation gap, and the entire point is to build in plausible deniability. I mean, think about it. If there's no record of an incident, the district can just shrug and say it never happened or that a promise was never made.
To really get a handle on how this works in the real world, let's look at a case out of Sacramento. It's a perfect example of this strategy in action.
So in this case, a mom reported that her daughter was being harassed, and not just once or twice. We're talking 17 separate times over just 3 months. And every single time she went to the school, she was told, "Don't worry, we'll handle it, we're looking into it."
And this slide just lays it all out, plain as day. Look at the difference. On one side, you've got the parents' meticulous records, 17 incidents, all logged with time-stamped emails, photos, even witnesses. And on the other side, the district's official response to a public records request. No responsive records exist. Zip, zilch, nada.
So you have to ask, how on earth does a gap like this happen? Is this just a massive 17-time accident? Someone just kept forgetting to file the paperwork? Or is it something else? Is it a deliberate choice? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. During that Sacramento case, this smoking gun email came to light. It pretty much proves the whole strategy was intentional. It says, and I quote, "Incident reports create liability. Handle matters verbally when possible." So, yeah, this isn't an oversight. It's a direct order to avoid creating a paper trail.
Okay, so if this is a deliberate strategy, there's a really important question we have to ask. Who is it being used against? Is this policy of verbal handling applied the same way to everybody?
Well, an internal audit after the settlement revealed something pretty stark and honestly disturbing. When parents of white students filed complaints, their issues got documented in writing 42% of the time. But for black students, that number just plummeted, down to 6%.
And here's the crucial point. When a policy like this, a policy about documentation, is applied so selectively, it's not just an administrative failure anymore. It becomes a form of discrimination. It creates this two-tiered system where some families' concerns get validated and put on paper, while others are just erased.
But this, right here, is where the power dynamic can completely flip. Because if the district refuses to create a record, then you will. You can build your very own fortress of evidence that they absolutely cannot ignore or deny.
If you take one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this. You have to become the documentarian for your child. You absolutely cannot and should not rely on the school to create the evidence that you might need down the road.
So how do you do it? It's actually pretty simple. You create your own parallel documentation system, one that the district can't touch. And you use the tools you already have, your email, the camera on your phone, even a basic spreadsheet. Every single entry becomes another brick in your wall of evidence.
And listen, this isn't just about being super organized. All this documentation you're creating, it has real, actual legal power. Power that can turn the district's no records defense completely on its head.
First off, there's a legal concept in California called mandatory duty. Basically, if a school district has its own policy that says they will document complaints, that's not just a friendly suggestion, it's a legal requirement. So by ignoring their own rules, they're actually breaking the law, and your documentation is the proof.
Second, and this one is really powerful, the law allows for something called adverse inference. Here's what it means. If a district was supposed to have records and they can't produce them, a jury is actually allowed to assume the worst. They can assume that those missing reports would have proved your case and been really bad for the district.
So what does all this mean? It means their entire strategy totally backfires. The no records defense doesn't prove your claims are baseless. Quite the opposite. The very absence of those records becomes powerful evidence of their bad faith and maybe even their awareness of guilt.
Okay, let's get practical. Let's put all of this into a simple, actionable protocol. Think of this as your playbook for taking back control. The first and most critical step is this. Within 2 hours of any incident or conversation, you email yourself a detailed summary: who, what, when, where. That email's automatic timestamp creates what's called a contemporaneous record, and that kind of evidence is incredibly hard for anyone to argue with.
Step 2. After any verbal conversation, whether it's on the phone or in person, send a polite but firm confirmation email. Just summarize what was talked about and what they agreed to do. Something as simple as, "Hey, just wanted to confirm our conversation," is perfect. Now, if they don't write back to correct you, their silence is basically seen as agreement.
And here are all 5 steps together. It's a clear, powerful system. You create your own immediate records. You confirm every single verbal conversation in writing. You put the school on notice by citing their own policies back to them. Then you use a Public Records Act request to officially prove that the documentation gap exists. And finally, you present your rock-solid documentation as the primary, most reliable evidence there is. This is exactly how you take back control.
So, that leaves us with one last, really powerful thought. When you become the documentarian, you're not just collecting evidence for a potential fight. You are creating an institutional memory, a memory they cannot pretend doesn't exist. You are forcing them to remember what they are legally and morally obligated to never, ever forget.